Hello everyone, welcome in. My name is Bengal Cats and I am a Sims Twitch streamer. Today I'm building the Orange Generation home of Lil Simsy's Not So Berry challenge. One of my biggest challenges in all of this was to build a smaller home, but have it be for 3, maybe even 4 Sims if I can help it, depending on if the Orange Generation gets married or if they stay as a single parent. Orange Generation in the Not So Berry challenge is a lot of fun. So their house was obviously a little bit crazy. Their parent was a little bit erratic, choosing different things in their life consistently. They enjoy baking, but they also join the evil career. So they become evil, they become a criminal. They have the public enemy aspiration, and they are really bad at it. No one believes that they're a criminal, and everyone just thinks they're actually just in the business career. Now, in the Orange Gen apartment that I built, which is on my gallery is Bengal Cats 525 if you're looking on Sims Gallery. I have a closet full of a bunch of hidden gems that they have stolen throughout their time, and it's taken them a long time to be able to steal all of that because they're obviously not a very good criminal. Now, this house was kind of tricky for me because there's not a lot of good orange things. Like, you go from like bright orange to light brown, so I really utilize specific shades of light brown to make this build as good as it can get. Of course, I started off with the kitchen because that is what I do. I always start with the kitchen, and that's how I figure out the plan as to who this sim is going to be. The kitchen's also very important because the Orange Generation loves to bake. They also like to steal cooked goods from their neighbors, so the neighbors better watch out. And a favorite of mine is utilizing different dining room chairs. For whatever reason, most of my builds don't have matching dining room chairs if there's any form of the family does not have a lot of money. And you might notice from my previous build, I once again utilized these poles and banisters to give the apartment a little bit more space, but not make it feel crowded with the walls. I want it to feel like a snug home, but I also don't want it to feel like it's so snug that Sims can't walk around, because there's nothing worse than when you build a home and Sims cannot walk anywhere. Now, I have contemplated in a lot of my builds, you'll see me in this one a lot especially, change things out pretty consistently, and I've contemplated over time deleting that out of my builds, but I think it's really important to show that everyone goes through this process of doing things. And with this build in particular, I tried to make really quick choices, remembering that it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect and that there can be changes to it. And it's not a huge deal. So I kind of just put stuff in, even if it was just as a placeholder, and then if I decided later on that I wanted to edit it, like you'll see me do with this archway later on, then that's okay. It's going to happen. I really love the kitchen tile that we got, the floor tile. I believe that's Riviera. I don't utilize it enough. I think it's a really bold tile that's sometimes tricky for me to use indoors. Once again, I tried to use the Love Struck backsplash and struggled immensely with it, so I decided to delete it. I've started now in this process of putting in furniture first, and then after putting in the flooring and the walls, particularly because I just have a better time with that. I feel like if I do the walls first, it limits me a bit more. And I do have to apologize. My cat is currently jumping up everywhere, so you probably heard him meow a minute or two ago, and he'll probably meow again. You can see Spike, who is the cat who is meowing, on my Twitch. My Twitch is Bengal Cats. You can find the information below. I stream Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, as well as Tuesday and Thursday nights at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I typically do my building for Sims on either Tuesdays or Thursdays. More commonly, it's been Tuesdays. I stream my Not So Berry Legacy Challenge on Sunday mornings. And Thursday usually ends up being a variety day if I want a gameplay, a different Sims game, if I want to build something, or sometimes I have even recently started playing Disney Dreamlight Valley as well. I think the rug game has really begun to elevate. I think Sims has done a really good job of listening to us in that regard. I think they've struggled with it in the past of listening to us when we say that we need a bit more support when it comes to building with rugs. I think the other part that possibly made this house a bit easier to build is that Orange Gen never really has a ton of money. They're not a super successful criminal, so they have a pretty difficult time making a lot of money. So the house was going to be small and nothing was going to be too nice. So it's just going to be quick, small things. I ended up making some edits downstairs and just put one bathroom in instead of a bathroom upstairs and downstairs, and it allowed for the living room space to be a bit bigger. You can see I went back and forth on that table probably 3 or 4 times before I finally decided what I liked. So the next generation in the Legacy Challenge is the pink generation. So they grow up really poor. They go into the business career, quote unquote, just as their parents did, even though their parents were obviously not in the business career. They write romance novels, and then they finally end up quitting their job so they can fully pursue their dreams and live their best life. They're very unflirty, they're super neat, and they do have the aspiration of being the best-selling offer. So Pink Gen has to have twins. So I do have 2 beds in here ready to go. If we end up with more kids, I will figure out how to make it all fit. And you can tell that I rearranged the room a couple of times to make it work because I really didn't want to put bunk beds in there. I try to avoid bunk beds when I can in these kind of a situation because I want to make sure that I can fit 2 beds in there normally, because if I end up with extra kids, then I'll put in the bunk bed to support that. Windows, I was kind of shocked that windows took me as quick as they did because windows are normally a bit of a long struggle with me. I feel like I always go back and forth and I try to make them look as symmetrical as possible. What I've found that took me way too long to figure out is that if you stick with the same expansion pack of window, it helps a ton and it makes it a lot easier and goes a lot faster. Same thing with the curtains. Curtains, I feel like, are on the same struggle bus as rugs, where we don't quite have what we need. Something I find interesting is the lights that hang. I really wish that they would disappear when they're built. I know part of it is that you get to see how beautiful they are all around the house, but they just get in the way, so I never use nice lights a lot, and I already know once I start gameplaying, I'm going to end up deleting those lights because this build is so small. I'm going to end up going to the small disc lights because it's just going to make our lives easier. Now I turned that space under the stairs that was the original bathroom into the extra storage room. I just thought it was really good, and if you look on my gallery, you'll notice a lot of the little things that I have placed around the house are things that the Orange Air stole throughout their time, and I have them just strategically placed in different spots. I love doing this as of recently. I take a plant that I like, but I don't love the base of it, and then I take one of the vases and I size it down. I do have to say, Tool is your best friend. If you don't know the Tool mod by Twisted Mexi, I highly recommend it. That and Better Build By, also by Twisted Mexi, gives you organized debug, and Tool lets you change sizes, rotate things. This is still before my Sims 3 camera era, so you see me use Tool to make small rotations that you could just make with the Sims 3 camera that I had been previously unable to do because I had tried to go back to it a while ago and really struggled with it, and not too long ago I stopped and I forced myself to remember how to use the Sims 3 camera, and now I can't go back. At this point in the interior, I'm doing all of like the clutter fine-tuning. I'm trying to put a whole bunch of stuff everywhere. Now I know that obviously Pink Gen, I'm gonna have to store those beds in their household inventory and then switch them out for bassinets and then cribs. Because it's such a small house, I wanted to make sure that those beds fit. Next, we're moving to the exterior. So for whatever reason, I really wanted the Pink Gen to be intense gardeners. So you see me pull out a pretty decently huge garden, even though the Pink Gen expectation is only to have a well-maintained garden. I went a little extra with that. For once, I used a pretty bold roof, and I honestly think it kind of paid off, and decided to extend the roof and then add some columns there just to make it not seem like the roof was completely floating. I think one thing I would have changed had I ever done this again is made that front section with the door and the middle lower roof a different brick, because I think it really would have made it pop, and maybe even had some of the second floor match that as well. I decided to also add in a small little shed. This shed has a bunch of different gardening stuff in there. Oh, see, I did change a little bit of it at least. One thing you'll learn about me is about every residential home that I have has a fence. I did not have a fence growing up, and I really wish I had, so for whatever reason, every single Sims build I do now, I need a fence. No questions asked. There's just always a fence, no matter what I do. Here I'm starting to put in that huge garden. I'm not quite sure why I decided to put in such a big garden. I guess in my mind, I was kind of imagining that if they're living paycheck to paycheck and they don't have a ton of money, then it kind of makes sense for them to have a garden. Maybe they're growing a lot of the stuff that they eat with, and it helps be an extra source of income. I believe in my Pink Gen home, I do actually have a garden. My Pink Gen home is a modified home in Henley on Bagley. I believe it's 9 Old Mill Lane, and I believe that's already up on my gallery. As a reminder, my gallery is Bengal Cats 525 on The Sims 4. It is also down in the description. I am hoping that that clutter in the bedroom is functional. I don't remember if I ended up placing it in the final or not, but it really frustrates me that it's not functional. I believe if you put that teenage clutter, or it's like a teenage artist, garbage artist, I forget what it's specifically called, but it's all that kids junk, teenage junk that's on the floor all splayed out. Sims can't walk on that. They have to walk around it. So if you put it in front of the bed too closely, then the Sims can't get to their bed, which I find a bit counterintuitive, if I'm being honest. At this point now, I've gone back into the house just to kind of do some more fine tuning, some more small little clutter things. Trees will forever be something I completely struggle with. They're either too big, or they're too skinny and small, or I feel like they don't match the size of the house. My number one forgotten thing in homes, trash cans. My number two, doing the ceilings. This is also something that frustrates me quite a bit, is that you can't have fences, you can't start them from the house. You have to start them from the other end, and even then, if you have it connect to the house, the fence does a weird incline if the house is on a foundation, and it just feels a bit counterintuitive. The whole point is to create privacy, and I can't do that if I can't put the fence right up against the house. One thing I do wish is when you copied something, it would copy the size that item is at. I feel like what's super annoying, even if you're just using the typical hotkeys on the keyboard, it doesn't work correctly, and it copies the item and it puts it back at its regular size, which I find quite irritating. For flowers, I was trying to do pink and orange, because if it's really the Pink Gen's garden, then they need to be represented properly, and I just kind of went with a bunch of wildflowers just to help fill the space a bit. Tried to put in some dirt terrain. I've really worked on trying to have better looking terrain. I feel like exterior is a huge struggle for me, and I feel like I've worked a ton on it and making it feel lived in and not so typical cookie cutter of like, yep, here's a tree, all done. One thing that is quite frustrating is that some of the trees, I think especially the debug trees, they disappear when you zoom in, so you can't tell that they're actually there. Things like debug lights. I always wonder why debug lights don't actually shed any lights and they're just for show. You still want the light to be functional, because if it's ever getting used at night, then the light is useless. But then there's some debug lights that don't exist in regular Sims building, so we're kind of stuck with it. And most of those debug lights become pointless because they're unusable. I wonder if in the July 5th update? I forget what day that update was, but I wonder if in that update they fixed that window glitch that's been happening. I feel like they didn't. I feel like when I was building in there today, something else, but that was also still an issue. Curtains, I kind of stuck with the same 2 or 3 curtains throughout, regardless of whether I was doing orange or pink. Stairs, once again, took out, put back in. They might have gotten deleted actually when I was adjusting some things in the walls. But it led to that, which I really enjoyed and I thought was a lot better than the original staircase that I had. Thing I weirdly do have to say is I really appreciate when the shelves are too small that nothing technically slots into the shelf because it makes it a lot easier. I really don't like the slots that they give us on shelves. I would much rather just decide where it's going to go myself. So I almost love when things can't slot because then I can kind of place a lot easier and a lot quicker than if they did slot, because then you have to go back in and re-edit everything and you have to move the shelf and then put it back and hope that it all works out correctly. Alrighty, y'all, so that is my build. As a reminder, I do stream on Twitch 3 times a week. I stream Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, as well as Tuesday and Thursday nights, starting between 7 and 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On Sunday mornings, I do my Not So Berry Challenge. I'm about to be starting the Gray Gen. And Tuesdays, I'm normally Sims building. And Thursdays is normally a mix-up. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon.